Hello, everyone. I'm Virginia Prodan, the host of Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I'm so grateful for you returning here and sending us your question, your comments, and we are grateful. We are grateful for the new ones. I can see some of you coming here for the first time, and we are so grateful for that. I want just to tell you a little bit about our podcast. It's called Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. We try to encourage you to live a life of significance and success as God created you. And I love to share my experience with you maybe read my book. If the ones new didn't read the book Saving My Assassin, you can find the book at virginiaprodanbooks.com, and you can read about how God can use one person and change a country and change your life, change everything around about you, so you can live a life of significance and success. We also love to invite at our podcast the courageous leaders that will share with us how they conquer different situations in their life, how they invested in others. And one of those courageous leaders is Dr. Harold Trey Orndorff. I hope I said correctly your name. He is an associate professor political science at Oklahoma Christian University. I had the honor and the privilege to speak at Oklahoma Christian University to the students, to the young people, to donors, and to several other groups. So this is how we got to know each other. So Trey, we are so happy for you to be here. I know you are an award-winning professor, and you do several things on social media, presidency, on your co-hosting a podcast. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, I'm happy to. I'm happy to, and thanks for having me on the show. It's fun to get to be the guest on a show instead of the one hosting everything. Yeah. So yes, I'm Dr. Trey Orndorff. I'm a political scientist at Oklahoma Christian University, and as a matter of fact, I'm also the co-host and owner of the Politics Guys. Which is a podcast dedicated to bipartisan, civil, and rational debate on American politics and policy. And it's part of what's called the Democracy Project here in the United States, which is actually a set of podcasts that's been recognized, and its goal is to expand civil discourse in the United States, and that's kind of what I do. And so I'm kind of a weird scholar on that front, Virginia, because I spend a lot of my time not just working on kind of primary sources and kind of what you think of scholarship, but I do a lot of work to help inform people. And I hope maybe will inform your listeners a little bit about how political systems in the United States work and kind of taking that on in a long form. And so that's what I do, and that's who I am.
Oh, that's wonderful, because I believe one of the very important role that we can play, and God wants us to play, is to train the next generation to be leaders, to know about the country that we live. Many of them, they don't know. I live under socialist and communist, and I know where lack of freedom is. To hear many of them talking about America as a horrible place to be and so forth, I believe that is beyond my imagination. And it's because many of them, they are not taught in school about the true history of the United States, and also in college brainwashed by liberal professors about America. So I'm grateful for what you are doing. And I know when I came and I spoke to your group, to your students, many of them had very interesting questions, and very important questions for their future. Because after they finish, they have to go in real world and compete with others. And in a society where Christianity is mocked, or Christians are, question about their loyalty to God, they have to be prepared. What would you say to your students? How do you prepare your students for this type when they finish college and when they go to work to be prepared to respond for the faith that they have?
Oh, such a good question. One of the things that makes Oklahoma Christian University unique, one of the reasons that I work there, I haven't worked my whole career actually at OC. I worked in Washington, D.C. I worked in Central Florida at a number of institutions as well, primarily at Daytona State. And so, what makes a place like OC unique is this idea that we are concerned about the whole you, right? It's not just I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, your educational experience is very, very important, but your educational experience is one part of a whole person development, and a big part of that is our spiritual development as well. And that's something I'm really happy to be able to do with students at OC, and it's something you can't do everywhere, right? I get that, and that's okay. But I do think you miss something really important when you don't have that. But I think for our students, because you're already coming to a Christian institution, it's probably a little different than, say, when I worked at public institutions when you're asking that question, Virginia. And I think one of the things that's harder for my students is to not be part of that problem. In other words, why is it that there is significant resistance in some quarters to Christianity in the United States? As a matter of fact, on the podcast, I am kind of one of our Christian voices, right? So I fill that role, and it is unfortunate to me. I can't tell you how frequently that I see students, and they're kind of infected with things like which are kind of false gospels, like Christian nationalism, for example. And so, one of the things that I think is really important for me, and so I'm going to assume probably for many people who are listening to your podcast or listening to us today, they're probably not kind of on the fence about Christianity. They're probably some kind of Christian. And so, I can't encourage you enough. Your theology, the way you live your theology is not just impactful for you, and that's what I'm trying to help students with. It's going to be impactful for how politicians, how people groups, how states, how they're going to view Christians. And so we constantly have to be thoughtful about that. And I think today, one of the biggest things I help students with, Virginia, it really is trying to help them with some of those bad ones. And I'd say today, right now, the biggest one is Christian nationalism.
I'm glad you said that. How do you see the fact that sometimes students coming to your Christian college maybe went to a Christian high school? So here they are protected in high school, protected in college, and they go into the real world to work, and they find for the first time that there are people against them. Um, what how do you prepare them? Yes, ideology, I understand you prepare them as their ideology, but how do you prepare for real life, real situation?
No, that's a phenomenal question. I think one thing that's really useful about university life that gets overlooked is it's a chance to explore things that are not in your bubble, and it's a chance to say and do stupid stuff. Right? You're kind of learning, right? We all need those moments to think through things. I'll give you a real world example. This past spring, I always teach our introductory classes. So that means everybody who comes to OC is going to take at least a class with me. They're going to take American politics. We call those general education classes in higher education. And so I get all kinds of students in that class, right? You can be nursing, you can all kind of stuff, and that was right at the time of the LA fires were going down, and we had this kind of weird moment, but it's a good teaching moment. We had this moment where a student was saying we were talking about early just we don't even start with like American history per se or American politics. We actually start with a little bit of the political philosophy that leads up to the American Revolution. And so we were in that philosophy section, and that's when the LA fires are going on. And the student very sincerely says, well, I mean, we all know that the reason the LA fires are happening is because this is God's judgment on the evil people, the sinful people out in LA. And imagine, imagine the problems with that theology, and imagine the way that's going to come off to non-Christians. That's not, you know, that kind of comment in a different location would have been terrible. But see, but when you're at university, you have a chance, and we can have a conversation about. We can learn about that and say, well, do we really think that that's God punishing particular people? How does that fit in? And so, for me, Virginia, to try to help students in those environments, I think we need to give students space to say dumb things, to think wrong things, and then to walk alongside them in real ways to help them think about that deeply, and kind of in Christian scholarship. And so I think that's how you help them. And then you give them, and then you just move along, you give yourself more and more opportunity, right? So by the time you're a junior, senior, I want you out there in the world. I want you in an internship. You're not just in this bubble. I mean, and we don't always feel like a bubble. Like, you're right. We don't always just feel like a bubble for our students, because they've come from, sometimes already Christian schools, or they've come from particularly conservative. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me, that's not a critique, but it does limit what you've necessarily seen. And so it's a chance for you to kind of expand that bubble a little bit. But that's what I really think. And it's hard today. I mean, I don't know about, here we are, we're doing this podcast together. But when I was a kid, when I was in college, it wasn't as if I had to worry that everything that was always going to be on the internet or online, or everything I was going to say was going to be in social media. And so it's hard. Students need a space to be wrong, to say stupid things. It's not going to live with them for the rest of their lives. Exactly. And what other place is there than like a classroom today to do that?
That is so true. But in the same time, we as Christians, um, by saying it's a God's punishment, we kind of give the non-Christian the right to judge us, because they believe that God is a God of punishment, but God is a God of love. So he said, go and make disciples. And, and Christ guides us making disciples by loving the unlovable, because if we look back in our own life, he loved us when we were unlovable, and because of that we can love the unlovable. One of the things I will never forget, being in an interrogation room and being beaten and tortured, and they hit my head at the table, and my body to the wall. And I remember God whispering, tell them that I love them. So I told them that God loves them. I don't hate them, but I don't appreciate what they're doing, but I don't hate them. They were turning their heads and they were crying, because God's love conquers everyone. So I know that many people are saying, and I agree with them, and I try to teach many people, when we talk with non-believers, we have to make sure that we don't use biblical words that they don't have. They don't have an understanding. It's like me talking with you in legalism words, or you talking with me in words, or your PhD words that I might not be able. So what I am saying is, try to speak normal language that everybody will understand. God sent us to make disciples. And one of the things I believe, for students, what I notice is talking with them is, how do you keep that balance between talking with a non-believer, but not adopting their values?
That is an excellent question. And I think for many of the families that come to me and ask similar kinds of questions, I think we're probably a little too worried about the we're going to adopt their values, as opposed to what I love what you're talking about there, which comes through in your book, by the way. Uh, that love, right? One of the things going around right now in some, I will call it some Christian adjacent circles and some Christian circles, is this idea of like toxic empathy. And it's such, I hate that so much, because you're right. What defines us as Christians is our love. And that means it's not just like, oh, I feel some kind of happy go lucky, lovey feeling. What it means is actually doing things for people in your space and in your community so that they can demonstrate that love. And because you stood up that question beautifully, because for most people, one of the things that is a barrier to even being some kind of theist, right? Even before we get to Christianity, to being some kind of theist, is they look around at a universe that seems cruel and terrible, and the assumption is okay, well, if there's going to be a God, he's got to be good. And I look around the world and I don't see good, I see cruel and terrible, so obviously there is no God, right? And so I think that is the number one, for listeners, that is the number one position most people are going to be in. They're probably sympathetic to some kind of theism, but they see a cruel and terrible world, and they've probably experienced some cruel and terrible things. Uh, and they don't, so what do you do with that? And that precisely, right? If you want to be, I know that's what's kind of the topic of your podcast, if you want to be a true leader, you're going to go do what Jesus did, and you're going to help a bunch of people and you're going to help their pragmatic needs, and you're not going to come at them. You're going to try to solve their pragmatic needs. And I promise you, if you do that, you will be overwhelmed with the number of people who ask you this kind of question, because I get this asked all the time. What makes you different? Why are you different? And that's your opportunity to then say, well, this is different because I'm a Christian. This
Yes.
is different because I'm reflecting the love of Jesus, right? This is different. This is very true. You share that in your book. I'll share a personal story from me. Um, I have had 27 surgeries in my life over the last number of years. I have significant chronic illness issues. Sometimes I have hair, sometimes I don't have hair. It's just I take infusions all the time, and I have connected. And that sounds like a terrible thing. And trust me, if I could somehow get rid of it, yay, woohoo! I wouldn't. I pray for that constantly. But I truly believe that I have what I have because I have connected with students and with people and with ill people in a way that I never would have had that not been part of me, right? It is fundamentally different to minister to people in that circumstance and to be praying with somebody in the hospital when you've been in the hospital 27 times, when you know that staff really, really well. And so, yeah, I think that is absolutely the key. Is that instead of trying to withhold empathy or to be worried that we're being used or abused as Christians, we need to primarily worry about, not that that can't happen, but I don't think that happens as frequently. We need to be we laser focused on is how can I meet the practical needs of people in my community, whoever they are, and that's going to open up doors.
Absolutely. You remind me of a story that happened to me here in America. I was working in a law office, and I used to come very early in the morning. You do more working in the morning. And when I got in there, I got to the kitchen, and the coffee was already there. And it was a young man there who was in charge of the coffee and cleaning the kitchen and doing paperwork and all kind of things. So um, at one point he said to me, I like you. I said, why do you like me? He said, I like you because you are Christian. I never said anything to him, but you can express your Christianity in words or in action. So people will recognize that.
Hmm.
So he said, but what I appreciate at you is that you are Christian, but you don't beat me with the Bible in the head to become a Christian, like my mom. My mom did that all the time, and when I left home, I um, I refused to go to church. So when I heard that, I prayed and I said, Lord Almighty, help me to witness to Him in the best way possible. And we created a friendship. Sometimes he will come to me and ask questions about life and everything. And um, not long after that, I don't know how long, maybe it was 6 months, a year that he was there, he disappeared. I didn't realize. Then I found out that he moved in Louisiana.
Mm.
Years later, as I am very active on social media, he put a note on social media and he said, I knew this lady a long time ago, and he explained the situation and everything. And she plays such an important role in my life without saying anything about the Bible and anything. I read her book, and I'm here to tell you that God puts on your path people so you pay attention. Maybe if I would have paid attention to her more often, I wouldn't have gone through a lot of pain. But now I am back to God. So that was absolutely amazing how God made me aware of this. Sometimes God allows us to know, people that are influence in our life, and sometimes not. But what I believe the most important is, first of all, to know your values, read your Bible, know your God, know who God is and who you are, how much you need God, and go on, because God will protect you. He said you will protect, and we know from our own experience that he has done an amazing things. And you're right, every student should keep that balance between being a witness to their non-Christian friends, and in witnessing, your faith grows, your muscles will grow. So that's a great opportunity. When the school start
We
this
start
year, do
this
you,
year. Yeah, we'll start here in the middle of August. Is generally we get started.
do you
Now,
have something in mind to give the students different assignments or different things that will encourage them to go and witness to others and come back to you and present that project? It will be a wonderful opportunity for them.
oh no, you love getting students out into the universe and to touch things. I think more often they follow us what we're doing as professors, right? So they will come along for the ride when we're engaged in the community, when we're engaged in our church, which is always a lot of fun. You know, you said something there about that young man that struck me, though, Virginia. You were talking about how he had mentioned, my mom was always beating me over the head with a Bible. Uh, for listeners out there, as the college professor, let me just tell you, I see far more Christian mom and dads harming their kiddos' long-term spirituality than I would like to. Precisely because of what that young man is talking about. So when you're the parents, you kind of have this idea of what's going to be, this exactly is going to be what the Christian faith is. And I mean, I'm not here to say that you're wrong. That's not anybody's point. I'm not trying to diss on anybody's theology. Um, but, your young daughter or your young son, they've got to figure that out for themselves. And so sometimes what ends up happening is parents get so dogmatic with their kiddos and they get so kind of browbeat that the way they respond to that is to reject Christianity. Um, and so I can't encourage, especially since, again, I'm assuming you have many, Christian listeners, be very thoughtful in that space. Give your adult kiddos, and when I say adult, I'm talking about your kiddos, 16 plus, right? Give your 16 plus kiddos that space to to understand, think about their theology. And it may or may not end up being precisely yours. My guess is it'll be pretty close. if you give them space. But if you try to browbeat them, I've been mentoring several students on that very issue recently, and it's difficult when you really want to talk with the parents sometimes. This is my chance, right? And just to say, guys, listen. I can tell you what's going to happen. Here's you don't want the other side. But anyway, that was an aside. I apologize.
Oh, no, no problem. I wanna also emphasize to you that there is another danger for the parents, and I notice that because when I train young people or even parents, and the other danger is that the parents want to help their children so much. Sometimes they put themselves between God and their child, and they provide all the needs, everything, and the child never goes directly to God to pray for or develop that relationship. And when they go to college, they look for someone else to provide for them, and there might be government, there might be a non-Christian person. It's nothing wrong to provide for your child, but let your child have a personal relationship and go with his needs to the Lord, and let them develop that relationship and see that hands of God providing for them.
Yeah, you can't be you're not the intermediary. That's the Holy Spirit. You're not going to be the intermediary for your kiddo. And I say here's a litmus test. If you're wondering, like, am I doing this? Ask yourself, is your kiddo, if they're in high school, for example, are you immediately the one who is talking with a teacher, or are you letting your student talk with that teacher first if there's an issue? And especially once your student is off in college, are you trying to contact professors and ask about grades and ask about things? Or are you having your student do that? And if the answer is if you're doing those things, you're probably doing exactly what you're talking about there, Virginia, as a parent, is that you want to do all of it. And that then ends up being you're doing all of it for the spiritual side as well. And that doesn't work. It will never work because it has to be a personalized individual relationship. It just does.
Yes, that is so true about this. Um, you are doing so much with your social media presidency. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're doing and why it's important for you to do that?
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. So a long time ago, I won't say quite how long ago, many years ago when I was getting my PhD, I was very interested in the impact of this really kind of new area of communication, which was then sometimes called new media. We now call social media. And now we all know it. It's like Facebook, X, you know, well, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, all that kind of stuff. But not all of those existed yet. I mean, at that juncture, really the only big ones at that juncture were Facebook and what was then called Twitter. And I was really interested because what I saw was I had been practicing politics. So I had actually worked on campaigns and things. And I had been seeing this shift, this movement from doing all that kind of door knocking and those things. Not that that's gone away entirely, but this ability to connect with people on social media. And as a matter of fact, Barack Obama, when he was running his primary against Hillary Clinton, so Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama actually faced off in the Democratic primary. One of the things that I got to see and I was paying attention to closely was Hillary Clinton's camp didn't like keep phone numbers. They didn't do social media drives. And Barack Obama's campaign was one of the early mainstream ones to do that. And what ended up happening is there's a lot of evidence to suggest, it seemed like to me at that juncture, that that was going to tip the tide, that that was what was going to tip things towards Barack Obama, candidate Barack Obama at that juncture. And so I went to my dissertation advisor. That's the person who like you have to write your first book with to become a PhD. You got to write a book is what happens. And so I pitched to my dissertation advisor. He's a presidency scholar because I knew I wanted to do presidency, but I wanted to do this stuff on social media. And I'll never forget, he said, Trey, I love you. And he was also a Christian. He was a Catholic. I loved him a lot, Dr. Barrio. And he said, listen, I love you. I want to be your advisor. He said, I trust you, but I don't think this fad is going to stick around. And so he gave me he gave me some rope and some grace, and he let me start working on this book that became what's called the Social Media Presidency. And that book came out now, goodness gracious, let's see, 15 years, 16, 16, 16, yeah, 16 years ago now, as I think about that. And that's what set me on the drive to study and think about how social media impacts, particularly presidential politics, because that's my area. But then, as a result, as sidelines, as how it affects life in general as a social scientist. But I think today, as we look at like President Trump, I don't think I was wrong, and so that's what I study is how and why do presidents like so why does Trump spout the things off he does on Truth Social? That's what I pay attention to.
Yeah, that is something that we can have a discussion on the next podcast. But for
Absolutely, I would love that.
I really appreciate you coming here and sharing with us your thoughts and your treasure. I hope that people will take notes. And I just want to thank you so very much to everyone that it's here listening to our podcast and sharing our podcast with others. I hope you go to and read the book at virginiaprodanbooks.com, because as you can see, we have people even in New York, Democrats that elected socialist communists that wants to build communists in New York. So it's good to know and understand what communist and socialist stands for, and how to be strong and courageous, and how to live a life of significance and success. We are grateful for each one to be here. We hope to see you. We have our podcast every Wednesday and Saturday at 10 o'clock. Of course, you can watch it at any time on podcast and Podbean and on YouTube. And we are grateful. Thank you so very much, Trey, again. And we hope to see you. Send us your question, your comments, and we'll keep in touch. Until next time, God bless you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.